Hey there guys, and welcome back to Europe in Detail, or in particular to southern Spain, to our little town here based on Ronda. So we build a whole heap of things in this episode, but we're going to start out with this build here based on a place in Spain called Alcalá el Juca. I hope I pronounced that right, I've been working on that all day. But just check this place out. These buildings are pretty much built straight into this cliff here. So this is what we are going to do at the start of this episode. And I've decided to build it over here to the east of the city. Now this means a little bit of jiggling ground, and the highway we had coming in here, I need to turn to a tunnel because we are going to make a massive hilltop on the side of it that we're going to turn into this cliff. And I guess the other reason I want to put it out here is because I don't really want to ruin the aesthetics of Ronda too much. So when I say ruin, I mean I still want to make a town, or the majority of this town, look like Ronda because that was the original vision and it's beautiful. But I also want to include these other places in Spain. But this one in particular is very different from Ronda. It's on that really steep hill, and yeah, I think it just makes sense to sneak this one to the outskirts somewhat. So the other cool thing that I thought of was I wanted to make this like an ancient attraction with a path running in here, with a real attraction in here for real citizens in the city or in the town to come and visit. So in this instance, my attraction is just going to be some maybe 500 or 600 year old houses that have been hollowed out of the cliffside that are available to tour through. Obviously now there's not much left of them, but you can still move through the chamber where they were. And I've used an entertainment cube service with the spawn point set back to a road to get those people to move through and up and into this area. In terms of the props and stuff that I've used to make this, the rocks I've matched obviously to the colour of the cliffs that we've already got in our little town, and I've tried to use one that looks like it's been weathered, because when we look at the cliffs in Alcalá el Juca, you can see here that they look like they've been weathered heavily by water. So that's definitely something I've really tried to follow here. I don't think I've got it as close as I would have liked, but that's been the idea. In terms of detailing the inside of it, I really just want to start with like trail maps or information boards where you can get facts about the houses and the inhabitants that may have lived here. And I also want to make it like quite rugged. I don't want a flat path in here. I don't want a perfectly flat bottom. I want it so that you have to clamber over a few rocks to get to the best part, sort of thing. So in light of that, the ground in here is not flat, and neither is the path that I've got running through here, which as far as I'm concerned is perfect. So I finished this off by creating some openings in the side of the rocks that sort of double as windows. And you guys will see the view from in here back down the coast towards Borgovino and Gotsberg is pretty cool. So now you'll see me start to place some of those buildings, and some of these are going into the cliffside as well. And we're sticking with those Spanish buildings that we've been using up to this point. And initially you can see here I had this road running with the contours of the rock and the hillside here, but eventually I changed this. I bring this in more like fingers that are running into dead ends, because it allows me to place the buildings with a better view looking back down the hill. And I have to say, the further through this part of the build I got, the more excited I got. This really started to look amazing. These buildings are just so good, and the way that they're moving in and through the rock here just really looked good. I just had a really nice vibe while I was building this. I wanted to add some sort of area that was unique and a little bit different in amongst all of these buildings that looked much the same. I've got some really positive comments from you guys in regards to doing my own thing, so it's going to start pretty much here. I want to put some sort of little plaza in here where maybe you can get tickets or something like that before you walk up some stairs and across the road and into that little wee ruined or ancient ruin area that we just built. And I'm relying on my good old method of putting down the pedestrian paths first here and then building around them. So initially you see me here having it way up in the air, and I had plans to do something different, but I realised it wasn't going to work. So you'll see me change this up and put the path back down on the ground so we can make just a really nice ground plaza basically. I'm also going to include a few little shops around here, and they're going to plug into the back of these buildings that are on the roadside. So essentially these buildings I'm placing here around the roadside are just going to give us a frame or an outside edge to our plaza on the other side. This is also about the time I decide to put the stairs in to cover our path where it goes up the very steep part. And now we've got everything set, we can start detailing this plaza, and it starts with a really nice decal here. I'm using this one from Seabud because it looks really Spanish. I think this blends in pretty perfectly with what we're going for. It's also worth noting here that the ground isn't perfectly flat, it rolls a little bit, which I'm cool with. I really like it actually, to be honest. My OCD definitely took a hit to begin with, but I've gotten used to it and it gives the area a lot more character, I reckon. So once we're done with those decals, we can put in the few little shops that we're going to have in, and things like hedges and doors if I need them. And I really want to go pretty hardcore with the detailing in this particular part, so I look to put in things like bollards, bike stands with bikes in them, little wee planters out the front of shops, fences and things like that, just to make areas look a little bit more dynamic. And if you've got a really keen eye, you'll also notice I'll put a little bit of graffiti in and some trees and stuff here and there. So here you'll just see me shady a few props into position at the back of these buildings here to try and make it look like they meet up with this path a little bit better. I also wouldn't mind making it look like there's some sort of elevator here, because if there's someone in a wheelchair that wants to go into the ruins and have a look, these stairs are going to be pretty daunting. And we can't have those negative ratings online, man. They're no good for the town. So let's make sure we cater for everyone that wants to have a look around. Now the other notable thing that I do here is I've decided to keep the concrete pedestrian path that I normally hide and just work with it. You'll see me use procedural objects to manipulate some blocks of concrete, some old stone ones to be more particular, and make handrails around those paths so that they look like they're reaching up and across the road. And I top this area off by putting in some ivy and a plant archway going over the path. So the next thing after that to move on to is basically just filling out more of these blocks with houses, and these are all pretty much residential houses. This would be a great place to have a house. I'm not going to ruin this area with anything stupid like industrial areas or even entertain the idea of putting any commercial up here. This is pretty much all those residential houses we just spoke about. But as we transition down towards the flat that the main town is on, we start to see a little bit more of that low commercial pop up here and there. And because of the landscape around this area being particularly hilly, I've also tried to sandwich in the odd cliffs here and there, and I'm using Avania's really nice Adrid looking cliff prop. So as much as it pains me to do so, there is an entire block in Ronda that is a car park, and it probably makes sense, seeing as we're playing the game of City Skylines as well, to give these citizens somewhere to park. So we're going to turn one of these entire blocks into a car park, and we're also going to have a private car park that's a little bit closer to the market on the far corner to the right. So cruising around on Google Earth having a look at Ronda, I found this really cool and interesting intersection. Some of you might also remember that I mentioned in the first or second episode that I hated the intersection that I made originally, so we are going to replace it with something like this one here in real life. So we only have pretty much one intersection coming into this town. I think that's going to be big enough to service it, but it needs to be efficient because of that. Aside from this intersection looking beautiful, it's also a very compact double dumbbell intersection, which should do the trick for our little town here, which funnily enough might be why it's there in real life. For whatever reason, this is a beautiful looking intersection, and I am going to do my best at building this in City Skylines. And because our town is a little bit smaller, I'm going to look to bring this in pretty close. We're going to be building pretty much right up to the edge of this intersection. So all of this starts with me getting rid of this horrible intersection that I made originally. I also decided to shuffle the train line over a little wee bit just to give me a little bit more room. The first thing I want to do here is run an elevated highway right through from my tunnel right up to where I deleted the road originally. Then I need to make a couple of roundabouts that I can use on either side. Once those roundabouts are in position, I can hook a small one-way road up between the two of them, and then I can hook up the on and off ramps onto the highway. So at this point I unpaused the game and the intersection was running really nicely, so let's move in a little bit closer and start detailing it. Now I had to get really crafty with procedural objects to try and make this pattern on the inside of these roundabouts. I was pretty dedicated to getting this as close as I could because it was just such a huge part of the aesthetics of this intersection. So if I told you that I used a curb, a decal and an umbrella to make this, would you believe me? Because that is indeed what I have done. So after a lot of work with procedural objects, I've got this pretty good. I'm really happy with this. It looks great, I think. A couple of noticeable differences from the original though. Number one, I've got a star on both sides of my intersection, whereas the real life one has more of a flower pattern on one side. Number two, I think in real life these are raised up slightly in the middle like a dome shape. So that was just going to be far too difficult for me to achieve. This is the closest I could get, and like I said, I'm pretty happy with this. To finish off this intersection, I've used these sea walls here from Armesto and created like little retaining walls here, and then used some surface networks to make it look like the land is swollen right into the back of these retaining walls. And I was trying to be as particular as I could with this because this was a big part of the vision, and as trivial as that may have sounded, you'll see what I mean when this is complete. Having the land swell right into the back of these retaining walls makes these two one-ways between the roundabouts look like they've been cut into the earth. And unfortunately, the terrain controls with the original game are just not tight enough to be able to create this without mods, without using surface networks and these retaining walls. But you can see here, this is starting to look pretty good already. And the last thing we need to do to finish this intersection is just roll in and put some scrub here and there and make it look like it's a little bit more realistic. I want to try and include some dusty dirt patches, some scrubby grass that's growing over the edge of the highway in a couple of places, and just make these areas off the highway look untidy in general. Also, when I keep the bushes and the scrub around this intersection small, it makes the intersection look a lot newer, maybe like it's been completed in the last 3 to 5 years. I've also decided we're going to have a tram running in the town, and I want to put the depot pretty much right here, which means I'm going to have to change the layout of this intersection or the way that this intersection enters our town at the least. So for now I've used the vanilla tram depot, and being honest with you, it actually doesn't look half bad in the town for a vanilla building. I think it actually blends in really well, being brick, the colour being sort of that earthy pastel tone. In any case, it'll be easy enough to cover or hide if I want to, but for now I'm pretty happy with it. So now that's in position, I can focus more on bringing this intersection in, and I've decided to put another very small roundabout here with 3 exits off it. Well guys, this might be my last video for a couple of weeks as I'm on holiday now with my family. I hope you guys are going to enjoy your holidays as well, and remember to take time to think about what you're grateful for, and I wish every single one of you guys a very Merry Christmas. If you guys are interested in giving me a Christmas present, you might give me a thumbs up, but enjoy your holidays guys. I will see you on the next episode.